You know, I think there's a sense that in some quarters that cities aren't as important as they once were. You know, that maybe it's because of the internet. You know, all the, you know, that people don't need to be near each other in order to even work together. But man, I just don't, I just can't see that point of view at all. I think cities are more important than they ever were. I think the creativity that comes from a lot of folks in the same place, interacting, bringing together their own differences, their aspirations for their lives and for their families and for their businesses, and for, you know, education institutions and cultural anchors like, you know, museums and theaters and all of that. I think there's a vibrancy in society that we wouldn't have if we didn't have cities. I think a country without, you know, without cities that have that vibrancy would be a pretty bland culture and a pretty bland society. And, you know, I mean, I'm a city boy, so, you know, that's what turns me on.
Originally, we were working on a project exploring the planning issues and the preconceived notions that people have about the southern region of the United States. And while working on that project, we were commissioned to do an additional analysis looking at the southern part of the United States and the state of New Jersey.
And that project involved creating this documentary. And to do that, we used what we had at our disposal, which was an iPhone, a voice recorder, and a point-and-shoot camera. And for the southern portion of the documentary, we traveled to Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. And for the New Jersey portion, we traveled from the top of the state to the bottom of the state.
We did the filming of the southern part during January and then the part for New Jersey during June. But we think that even though it's different seasons, that it'll still work.
And obviously, these are two different scales. One is a state, one is a significant region of the country, but we don't think that means that comparisons can't be made, and there's certainly a discussion that can be had about the planning issues that face both places.
Yeah. And the way that we found the stories that are in this documentary is that we found people on the street, by and large, asked them to share some time, tell us what they like about their place, what they don't like about their place. We also found people in retail locations, office parks, a couple restaurants. There were a few professionals that we sought out, but by and large it was people that serendipity brought to us. And we really think that their stories and thoughts are interesting and of note.
Yes, very much so.
having lived outside of Jersey in the earlier part of your life and coming to live in Jersey now, what do you think about some of the stereotypes that you heard about New Jersey?
They're all true.
Can you can you go forward on that one? Can you explain which ones you think are most true?
I think I actually think that people in Jersey actually deliberately keep them true and kind of enjoy it. I don't know. I think the loud talking, the high hair, the spandex, the tanning, all that stuff. I know a lot of people who do all of that.
Before I moved to New Jersey, I thought of it as kind of dirty, industrial, kind of like what now I would think of as Newark. More that would be more of the state. I thought that. Well, I've been told before I came here by various people that people in New Jersey are rude and loudmouth and bad drivers. So I was kind of on the lookout for that.
The stereotype that is not true is when people say that people in New Jersey are rude or unpleasant or anything like that. The people here are the most awesome people I've ever met, and I love living among the people here and hanging out with them, doing things with them. People tell me I've gone native, that I even sometimes act like I'm from Jersey, and now when I tell people I live in Newark, people will say, "Oh, did you grow up there? Are you from there?" Like, no, I'm from South Carolina. What are you talking about? And of course, when I say it that way, then they don't believe me.
What about the stereotype that Jersey is just the turnpike or the parkway?
Oh yeah, it's not that. I mean, there's so much more here, and well, it's the turnpike, the parkway, and the shore. Don't forget about that.
How true to life do you think sort of the Jersey Shore and those sort of Jersey-centric reality shows are?
Right. Well, those are very based in the summer life and the quote-unquote Benny lifestyle, which is an acronym for the people that it's a nickname, not a very complimentary nickname for people that come down here on the weekends and during the summer months, and people come from northern New Jersey and New York, and I guess other places north of here, and they come down for the seaside heights and Point Pleasant scene, the bar scene, the partying, the dancing, then the drinking, and it's they're sort of treated as invaders to like something that we really appreciate, and we feel that they don't, I would say. So it is accurate. It definitely exists 100%. If you go over to Seaside, there are people exactly like the people on Seaside Shore. It's not something made up or created by MTV. It does exist, absolutely.
You know what? I lived on the Jersey Shore. I went to Seaside, had lunch there, went to Karma, used to hang out at Captain Hook's. All of that was not going on at all. And I think it's definitely hyped up. There are some elements of those personalities there, but no, the Jersey Shore is not. It's definitely been hyped up, overhyped, and between that and like the Real Housewives of New Jersey, like I don't know where these stereotypes or these personalities have come from, but I know they exist because they're real people, but I don't think that as a whole that New Jersey is like that.
And do you think that image predominates people's view of New Jersey?
Definitely in the extended United States, and I would assume globally. If you ask somebody about New Jersey, that may be what they think of now. But I would say within New Jersey, I think it's more realized that that's not exactly what we are, and I think people do definitely get offended by it. I personally don't get very offended by it because I know that that's not New Jersey. It's sort of outsiders coming into New Jersey. But I honestly don't really care very much what the rest of the world thinks, because if anything, I'd rather have less people know about what they're missing here.
I don't mind people thinking of New Jersey as kind of gritty, because it is. And to that extent, it's very real. And I like that. I mean, look, I grew up in Detroit. There's a gritty, real place. I don't want to live in a place that's not genuine. That's kind of phony or fake or, you know, snooty or, you know, real class conscious and all that.
What do you think about some of the stereotypes that Northerners and New Jerseyans have about the South?
Wow. You know, I don't find that people I think people in the South assume that Northerners have that stereotype about them more so than people here have the stereotype about people in the South. You know, I've never had anybody, when I first moved here, you know, assume that I was dumb or slow or anything like that. I think people, I mean, when I, you know, interviewed for a job to come here, I mean, I had a degree from a Southern college. I pretty much still had a Southern accent, and they had no problem bringing me on and welcoming me here. I think that people in Jersey are fairly open-minded about people from the South. I think more often people in Jersey would view Southerners as sort of a curiosity and as something different, something unusual, but I don't think that they have the negative stereotypes about Southerners to much of a degree.
I think perceptions about the South are changing a lot, but it certainly used to be. I mean, certainly when I was a kid or a young adult, you thought of the South as just a bunch of rednecks, right? The place is, you know, very segregated, you know, folks not well educated, you know, no interest in culture, that sort of thing. You know, real kind of, you know, kind of redneck persona. Now, that's changed a lot, you know, with places like Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta, you know, this incredibly cosmopolitan, you know, big city. It's a financial powerhouse. It's a, you know, it's got everything going, you know, full of universities. And so I think there's obviously a changing perception. And there's, you know, and there's still backwater places, but there's backwater places everywhere.
And do you think kind of the South is fairly distinct from kind of the North and the Midwest and the West?
Yes, I definitely think so. I've done a fair share of traveling to experience the North versus the South, and I think that the South is a lot different.
What do you think's different about it?
The pace, the resilience of the North. I mean, the North is just go get them, and the South is really more just laid back. I don't know. I just feel like the North is a little bit more professional, more advanced.
Advanced in what way?
Well, and I say that, but it depends, because I don't know, we're talking South. What is the South in your definition? We're not talking Texas, are we?
Do you consider Texas the South?
No.
Okay.
Texas, I always consider Texas to sort of be its own country. It joined America as an independent republic, and in its heart, it will always remain an independent republic. It has some Southern cultural value, but it's like your cousin instead of your brother.
What about Louisiana?
Absolutely, but they are like the black sheep of the family. They are they are definitely linked to the South, but they do their own thing. They have their own just incredibly rich heritage. I've always been jealous of them because they seem to have that past that places like Atlanta try to recreate for themselves. But yeah, no, they're the South, but they're a little different. Yeah. They're the ones who went off to college as opposed to went to the local one.
How do you feel, kind of, because everyone talks about how Louisiana is so different from kind of the rest of the South. Do you think that's true? Do you think it's not?
I don't think so. That's definitely an opinion, but I think Louisiana, it gets a rap for having swamp. What's that show that was out just recently? Swamp People, or whatever it's called. So that people envision some. I'm not going to use the term that people sometimes use for Cajuns, but anyway, they have this mentality, and then people from Mississippi have or people from outside of Mississippi see other people from Mississippi as rednecks, maybe, you know, hillbillies. So I think in a sense, every area has their own opinion about one another, but really it's all the same. in the big scheme of things, you know.
Do you have what are your thoughts on kind of people from outside Atlanta, their view of the area? And is that different than
their view of the area?
Yeah.
Well, it varies on who you speak to, but I can speak to some extremes. Like I used to go to New York like every Labor Day, and I ran into this one guy, and he was talking about Atlanta. He heard about Atlanta or something, and the things that he was saying, it was so off point for how the city really is. You know, it was I don't know. It was a Latino guy. I can't remember at this point what he said, but it was just really just crazy. You know, I was like, it's nothing like that. You know, but that was his perception of the city. You know, once people got a perception, you can just forget it. You know.
I don't know if you can explain it. It's just one of those things. If you're from the South, it's about what you identify with and with whether or not you see someone or something else as Southern. You know, so for example, like, you know, I've heard people here say, oh, Maryland, yeah, that's the South. And I'm like, no, it's not. And the reason, even though Maryland is south of the Mason-Dixon line, I tell people, look, nobody from Alabama, Mississippi, or Georgia looks at somebody from Maryland and says, you're a fellow Southerner. That's what it's about. It's like, you know, it's that feeling of, do you share my experience or do you share my cultural background? You know, do I feel like you come from the same place? And so that's ultimately what it's about.
What do you dislike about the state?
You have to drive everywhere. I absolutely hate that you have to. I wish there were more places that you could experience on foot or, you know, better connectivity. You know, sometimes it's actually easier for me without a car to go to the city than, like, get to work or get to the movie theater in West Orange. And to me, that's a very big barrier. You want people to be able to visit, you know, not have to go somewhere else, go outside of the community and spend their money.
And do you have any thoughts on transportation in the state?
Well,
like, is it tough to get
New
places?
New Jersey Transit, I would say, and even the New York MTA, it's I would say a leader in public transit. Again, the cost of maintaining rises the cost of using, and so it's gotten out of control. But I still believe it's one of the best areas as far as public transportation. Just you have to be able to afford it. You have to be able to afford to live here for one, and then you have to be able to afford the public transportation.
Is it difficult to get to different places in the state living here? Is public transit kind of limited?
I would say compared to living in closer to urban areas. I mean, there's where sort of the end of the train line, Bayhead is the end, and you could take a train, get on there, and go be in New York City, I guess, in maybe 2 hours at least, definitely. I mean, that's with a long train that stops a lot, obviously, but it's very accessible. We're sort of right in the middle, so we can access New York, Philadelphia very easily. I mean, there's buses, trains, and automobiles, so you can get anywhere you want, really. I wouldn't say that public transportation is lacking in this area.
Yeah, it was a pretty drastic change living in the city of Chicago. Transportation has been a big thing, and that was apparent from the first day we came to visit here, where we expected we'd kind of get here on the train and be able to take public transit to find our hotel and get around, which was not the case. It was kind of a mess trying to navigate the area without the public transportation that we were used to.
I think New Jersey has put some of the best public transportation in America. That's not saying a lot, but I do think that it's New Jersey has outstanding public transportation, considerably better than you might find in any other state, and particularly compared with states in the South.
And you keep on talking about, how you need a car to get a lot of places, but a lot of people look at Jersey and they say, wow, that's a lot of public transportation you have.
You know what? If they took a look at the New Jersey Transit map and saw a huge gap. And if they really understood how it works and where the gaps are, even though there are those lines, even though there are buses, it's not as well connected as you would think. And I mean that in terms of convenience, in terms of, you know, if I go to New York and I want to come back home, I have to catch the train out of Penn Station by 12:30. On a Saturday night, that is a killer. So, and if I don't catch that train, then I have to wait until 4:30 in the morning. So you know, it's all in the way you look at it. You can be an outsider and look at it differently, but when you're actually using the train lines, you know different.
And so how, do you live in Atlanta or do you live
I live on the outsides of Atlanta.
On the outside. And kind of what is the difference between kind of the suburb ring of Atlanta and kind of Atlanta City?
If I was to compare this with New York, not traffic, but transportation would be an issue for getting if you lived on the outside of the city compared to inside the city.
Yeah.
It's totally not like New York or Chicago.
Right, where you can just kind of get around.
Yeah, you'll have more of a hard time trying to get around the city.
Yeah.
Would be a downfall.
You will see these people at planning meetings just viciously fighting to widen a road. And it's like, didn't we prove like decades ago that no matter how wide you make the road, it's going to induce the same level of traffic? And so, but no, people are just have in their mind that, oh, no, if you add another lane to the highway, we'll move a little faster. And it's like, I don't know if you probably, when you went, you might not have experienced it at its full force, but Atlanta traffic's the worst. And it's like, why would you think that doing the same thing is going to produce different results when you can invest? And now, especially with the sprawled out suburbs, it's like, why don't you invest in regional rail, like New York has or Chicago?
Are they working to fix the transportation kind of hubs?
No, I think they like it the way it is.
Yeah?
They do have a bus transportation. They do have a monorail. But I guess you're comparing apples and oranges. New York's a far bigger city, even Chicago. But example, like in New York, you can get home anytime you want. You know, you go to Port Authority, last bus is at 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Way here, it's probably 12 o'clock. It's a train, that's it. You don't have the opportunity to catch a train than a bus. It's the train, that's it. The buses stop earlier. So for anybody that late night works, you need to drive.
You need to drive.
You have to drive.
It doesn't make any sense to me. And Atlanta's a real town. That was the thing. When you're a kid and you learn about the history of the city, you learn that it was the end of the line. It was called Terminus. And that's where the railroads all stopped, and that's how the city got started. And so the infrastructure is there. There's lines spiraling out of the city. It's just somebody's got to have the wherewithal to bring all the right people in the room and to be able to convince the people that that's a smart decision is to invest in maybe we should put a train out to Athens where the university is and allow that entire corridor, which is pretty full, to hop on the train to come to work. But at the same time, the argument against it is people work in office parks. People aren't working downtown. It would require a mental shift to say, well, then we have to relocate all of our, we'll have to start relocating businesses downtown. But of course, I don't see that as a terrible thing. But most people, they're stuck in their ways and they think, oh, I don't want to hop on a train.
The thing about Birmingham is weird is that from a design standpoint, it should be able to support public transportation very well. Because it's not like Atlanta. It was designed and laid out mostly pre-World War II, and we had streetcars and all that stuff. So I mean, the city of Birmingham, not Birmingham in general, but just the city of Birmingham was definitely designed for transit and designed in a pre-war environment. It was not auto-oriented in the way that it was designed. So the bones are there for good public transit, but people don't support it.
The worst is you have these people who think it's a conspiracy. It is that Tea Party mentality of anything mass transit is the government's effort to corral us into something. And it's like, of course not. And I always, when I have conversations with people, I say, you can keep driving. I just want the guy next to you to stop driving.
Right.
I understand that that's something that it's important to you. You need the car to get to work. But over time, if we can reduce the number of people on the roads, then aren't your roads better? And of course, then then they start to come around, but then they don't want to support. There's something inside of them says that they don't want to support it. Like the city's even has a referendum this summer for a 1 cent transit tax, and people are up in arms over the split between the amount of money that will go to mass transit and the amount of money that will go to highway, because I think it's a 60-40. And I think that people are they can't handle that the highways are going to get the lion's share of the money.
The highways seemed really nice when we were there.
They were huge.
But they were well paved.
Yeah, they were very well kept.
Like coming from Boston, where
we don't snow. We don't have.
Right.
That was another thing I noticed about when I came up north. The roads are terrible. It's just, but I get it. It's you have especially in Syracuse, the joke always was they have 2 seasons, winter and road repair. But no, like where I come from, it's smooth sailing, asphalt, as clean as you could ever want it. But it's never wide enough. It's never it's never good enough. And especially if you're Friday traffic, you always think, what can they do to make this better? And it's like, they can do nothing to the road to make it better except getting people off of it.
Yeah.
Have you had experiences of kind of racial tensions being in New Orleans? Were you some interaction?
No, totally. For sure. And it's like, as a planner, I've had that, where, you're representing an official process, and that the person that is, or not the person, but the institution that is bestowing that sanction is discredited among a certain community, or they feel like that institution is prejudiced against them, and so I've had to deal with that, and white people are still just sort of alien for a lot of lower income black people in New Orleans.
Can you speak to the difficulties of being a planner and coming into a place and trying to suggest, strategies or planning?
Yeah, in some respects, I feel like maybe that's why I got hired, because it's easier for me to work in a community like Newark and say, hey, this is what's going on, than for someone else who might be, a white person, tall, white man, to come in and say the same thing, and they'll, listen to me, or at least it'll soak in a little bit more.
Anytime you're in politics or in a community event or whatever, they're always integrated, well integrated, and there's like plenty of people that want to go to cultural events of different kinds that are in neighborhoods that are otherwise relatively segregated, but it's class. It's the intersection of class and race. Below a certain class threshold, the racial division gets like super sharp.
And you can find racism anywhere, absolutely. But I would say that down here you find many more experiences of blatant, racist people. And it's what it comes from. I'll give you a quick explanation of what it comes from. It's what happens down here is in the winter months. A lot of the housing here opens up because nobody wants to live here in the winter months, so it becomes Section 8 housing. So then they bring in the urban population that's looking for somewhere cheap to live. So then, because there aren't many people of color around here, then that's what the white people around here see and experience. So now the negative racial stereotypes are reinforced, and it sort of builds upon itself exponentially. That's where I think it comes from. But then it's also just not having people that are different than you around. You don't really understand them, and there's just, I don't know, it's just, it's very, very strange to me, but it's hard for people to deal with what they don't experience, I think.
I think that Jersey, tri-state and New Jersey obviously have a very unique culture, which I kind of enjoy. I love it. I find it fascinating being not from here. The South does as well. It also has a strong culture and a strong identity. What I think's been interesting is here you still see a lot more ethnic identity carried out. People will say, oh, that's an Italian neighborhood. Oh, that's a black neighborhood. Oh, that over there, that's a Jewish neighborhood. In the South, you see a lot less of that, and you see a lot more integration of the various groups. You see segregation at the economic level, but you see a lot of integration once you get past that.
Up north was always, how could you live in the South? What was it really like growing up? The thing about it is, black-white relations, everyone gets along. You go to any watering hole, bar room, entertainment venue, and you will see white folks can Dougie and drop it like it's hot almost better than some black folks here in the South. And our food is the same, the conversation is the same, but there is that line, I would say, that invisible line where I don't know if I would invite Billy Bob to come sit in my house, and likewise I don't know if Billy Bob would invite me to come over and sit with his daughter and his family.
Just, remember I talked about kind of the residential segregation as it relates to poverty. In Montgomery, the west side is black and poor. The east side is predominantly white and affluent. And downtown here kind of is not a real dividing line, but it's the end of, pretty much the end of services. And you don't even have a lot of grocery stores on this side. So just like any other kind of urban core, you don't have quality grocery stores. There's not a mall. There's not so all of those quality of life services are not there.
So you have a corridor of Hispanic development. You have a corridor of Asian American development. You'll have African American suburbs to the south of the city. You'll have white suburbs in certain areas. So it's growing up in a way that it's not mixed, but they almost have their own municipality instead of just their neighborhood. And I think that says a lot about the scale of development that we as Americans are doing. But it is interesting because the tension only rises when you get that old school mentality of that's not a place you should go. Is there conflict? Not necessarily. I don't think that there's, I don't think people are actively getting into fights in the street over the same reasons. Atlanta does bill itself as the city too busy to hate. And I think that in a lot of ways, people are just too busy, and I think it's because they're stuck in their cars. So there's no face-to-face interaction a lot of times. So I think that in some ways has reduced outward conflict, but there still is that mental stigma associated with, you just have no business there, there's no reason to go.
I mean, look, when I go to Birmingham, I mean, I don't know where y'all went or what y'all saw, but I can tell you right now that if living in certain parts of Birmingham, I could easily go days without seeing white people, easily. And I'm not talking about me being stuck inside the house. I'm talking about I could go out and about, I could go to the movies, I could be out and just not see white people for days, easily.
And these are all racial issues, which is part of the global issue, and they're all interconnected. There's huge disparity economically between people who are in the township or in the more affluent areas of the town, or those who live in the less advantaged part of the city.
Do you feel like there's been a response to that to try and help sort of municipalities and cities that aren't doing as well in New Jersey?
I'm not aware of that. I mean, that's not something I'm knowledgeable of, and I'm not aware of that. You know, my only comment to that would be that I think that in the United States, what I see happening, what I'm aware of that happens in urban development, is that the idea of successful urban development tends to be gentrification, and that's not the solution to anything, because that's just displacement for disadvantaged people.
Yeah.
But that's where, you know, city becomes a better place, a more desirable place economically, the tax base rises, and so, but it doesn't actually benefit the people who were there.
Part of the gentrification is that also, is it just kind of middle-class white people mostly, or is it also like middle-class black people? Like,
well, I think it's middle-class whites, because most middle-class blacks bought into the suburban ideal, so
okay.
They decided to move out where they can have land and pasture and all that. They bought into that concept. And most people who are out and have moved out, they're tired of sitting in the traffic.
Yeah.
So they decided to come in, so it's like it's flip-flopping kind of.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's been a lot of gentrification and misplacement of a lot of the indigenous people. So I'm not sure that's better. In fact, I know it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it depends on who you are.
Yeah.
As far as what you think of gentrification, but I mean, it's hard for me to complain about my neighborhood getting gentrified when the property values go up and it becomes safer.
Yeah.
My neighborhood's always been very white. It was more blue-collar white. But what happened, I bought where I live in the 80s, and it was white, blue-collar, and since then it's become two-lane law professors, lawyers, and doctors.
Oh, wow.
So it was pure luck that I moved in there, and that's just the way it evolved over time.
You know, I was telling someone yesterday when I was in New York, we were talking about gentrification, and I was telling them, I was like, you know, gentrification is not just about people's rents going up. That's not the real core reason why people get mad about it. People get mad about it because, like I said, in a massive city like New York, you're fighting for space, not just physically, but culturally. And it's like, you know, all cultures, all peoples, and there's so many of them from every part of the globe, everyone wants to feel like they have some space in this massive city that they can call their own.
What's changed in Austin?
It's changed everywhere.
Everyone's
the past
changed.
like
Like,
2.5, 3 years, like everywhere's different now, and
very
all
not
the cops are
homeless
like
friendly.
assholes.
Anywhere,
Yeah.
anywhere. You can't, like, most places you can't hold a sign.
And that wasn't the case a few years ago?
Yeah,
No,
you could go.
You could do whatever you wanted pretty much a few
Yeah,
years
you
ago.
could go places, you could hold a sign.
But now that because
people
the
would
economy,
yeah.
oh, you think
There's so many more
There's so
homeless
many more homeless people, and so many people doing the same thing now
Yeah.
that they're just like they have to crack down on it because there's just too many.
But then all the jails are overfilled anyway.
Yeah, now all the jails are overflowed with like panhandlers and like dumb crap, and I'm just like, really?
Yeah, like, yay, take me to jail for a pedestrian and roadway, like for holding a sign and you're not even in the road.
Is there a significant or any homeless problem?
Homeless?
Yeah.
Yes, we have a big homeless problem. It's more of adults. I think we need to work on that too. Like, I think they should have facilities for people that aren't homeless. Like, I mean, sometimes it's just your luck that you know what I'm saying, that you're homeless. It's not something that you plan. It might be the economy, you know. But I think they should have, like, facilities where you could go eat, you could go shower. You know what I'm saying? If they have extra beds, you can sleep, you know. I think they should have more of those.
I feel that, you know, there's certain places that you can get jobs, and Atlanta's not one of them. You know, because I've been looking for 2 years. I've raked leaves, I've cut grass, I've helped people change their tires, I've wiped down tires, you know, and, you know, it's just really hard. I put applications to wash dishes, tie steel, build columns, change air conditioning component systems, you know, just really nothing I can't really do other than read the Arms Law book of electricity. but I can hook up anything. I just don't have the license, and I guess I almost said I'm not smart enough, but I guess I haven't studied hard enough, because in God you can do anything.
There's a new park downtown called the Railroad Reservation Park. It's built on an old brownfield site adjacent to the railroad tracks that separate downtown from Southside. But I remember that was something that I heard a lot of people say, oh, why build a new park downtown? It's just going to be a place for homeless people to congregate. And, you know, that site was a place where homeless people congregated before the park was built. It was a brownfield site, there was nothing on it. So if you, especially in the wintertime, you see like these barrels that are, you know, they light the barrels on fire in order to stay warm. Like you would see that, and they would congregate in that area. But I don't know, I feel like that's, and I'm sure that goes on, this is probably just representative of American culture in general, but I do feel like there's much less sympathy for poor people in the South.
And there's so many abandoned houses and stuff.
And then they give you trespassing because you're cold and you're in one of them. It's like nobody's here, nobody owns this property. It's obviously been abandoned for a long time. Why do you care?
The middle class seems to be phasing out. You're either well-to-do or you're poor. So where has the middle class gone? Right. That's the big question.
We lost our largest industry, which was a gaming facility, and that was top story for weeks on weeks. Then the reason we lost it is because our governor closed the facility down.
Why?
He said it was illegal to have gambling in Alabama, so he closed the facility. We lost over 2,000 jobs from that, yes. in this economic recession, he closed a facility. We have nothing else in Macon County. That was the largest employer.
Economy sucks, spare a buck.
Yeah, I even tried to do the GED program they have here at the Mission because it's free. You don't have to pay for it. And like because of the whole van thing, I've just been dealing with that. I can't even go to school.
Yeah.
It's only 2 days a week, and I'm just like,
no,
I can't even do that because I'm like sleeping on the streets. I'm freezing all night, so I'm up all night. I can't get up in the morning to go to school.
Yeah.
People are dropping out of school left and right. People are finding, I think the graduation rate is 50 or 60% from high school right now, which is really low. People are dropping out earlier, so even if, dropping out 9th or 10th grade, it's a lot different than 11th or 12th grade. So obviously people aren't progressing to higher levels of education, and we're not building a system here where people are growing generation by generation. We're sort of going backwards, and that's problematic.
I have a daughter in public school, and when you have 4 kids to 1, that's an acceptable ratio. But once you start cutting back on teachers, and now you're talking 6 kids to 1, the kids are the ones that are being affected by that. And so I don't see it's not going in the right direction.
This is a community development issue. It's not just an education issue, because it affects the real estate values. It affects the desirability of a town. We know plenty of folks, myself included, who when I chose where to buy a house, I chose because I love the school system. That wasn't the only factor, but it was an important one. And so the quality of the schools is integrally tied to this the revitalization and the renaissance of urban areas, because it's clear that if we don't create better schools, and if parents don't have some choice about where to send their kids to schools, then not only are we losing yet another generation of kids, but our urban areas are not going to be places where middle-class families want to live.
If New Orleans can really be a success, people like to imitate success. New Orleans can succeed in making itself a center of opportunity for people, a place where people can safely raise a family, if it can be environmentally resilient, if it can do what it needs to do to be all of those things, it will set an example for the South. And I like to think that New Orleans, because it is of the South, can change the South from the inside.
I think the South is unfortunately on a collision course with the changing technology. I think much like having spent years in upstate New York and seeing the railroad and the canal and what they did to provide development up there, and then realizing, wow, one day it stopped. One day something else came along and replaced that mode of transportation, and then they went into decline, and then the other half of it is their industrialism. One day that stopped, and then bam, you look and it's like a post-apocalyptic movie sometimes when you're walking around up there. And I think that Atlanta has no concept that one day it can all be over, and what would you do then? I think that it's such a growth for growth's sake mentality that one day when it stops, people are going to flip out. I would move back if a revolution happened with people's mentality and they started to want to change how they live, how they get places. But it'll be slow, and they'll be dragged kicking and screaming, I think, to do it. And so there's no point.
Without a doubt, Atlanta is very rigidly segregated, not just in every aspect, but I think it has potential, if done properly, to grow, and so what a lot of people who migrate to this city bring here is a possibility for growth and change. Everything has an era, so I think maybe an era that existed here is coming to an end, but the good news is that Atlanta's in a unique position to set an example for the rest of the country, where people, they say, it's a civil rights city, so they got an opportunity to really demonstrate that it is by making sure everybody gets treated right and encouraging people to respect each other's humanity.
What do you think the challenges for New Jersey are going forward?
Same fiscal challenges all the other states face. You have roads that need to be repaired. You got to keep the property taxes low. Our car insurance rates are the highest in the nation. Our property taxes are the highest in the nation. We've got to lower those and to make New Jersey affordable, because average people, and it's tough to stay in New Jersey. Younger people, like our children, all have moved away. They live in Pennsylvania, Virginia. Younger people is having a hard time living here. Established old timers, we're not going anywhere. But the younger people like you guys are going to have a hard time trying to make ends meet.
Yeah,
it's tough for you guys to live in New Jersey.
Going forward, I think New Jersey is just sort of very much in the middle. It's like one giant commuter town. it's so you're sort of like locked in the middle of these giant cities, trying to deal with the issues of, I don't know, and it's a very wide array of people. So trying to make all those people, and there's so many of them, work together, it's very difficult. And I think there's no way to resolve those things. I don't think it'll ever happen. When you have that many people in such close quarters, I think there will always be an issue. It's very hard to avoid it. So, and you just got to keep sort of, I don't know, try playing the mediator and kind of making the people agree with each other as much as possible, finding that middle ground.
Do you see any way that planning could help alleviate some of those problems?
Well, I think on the most basic level, yeah, planning could help by raising people's awareness of the issues and helping to organize people and bring them together. I think a lot of the kinds of planning that I'm involved in right now, it's very specific, geographic-based neighborhood planning. So it's a community-driven process to figure out what are the community's priorities, and then how do you prioritize the priorities to figure out what should you go after funding for and when should you go after it.
Is there anything about New Jersey or Newark that you think is like important to know that we haven't talked about?
It's a great place as far as locate geographically. It's ideal because you're right next to New York City. The only problem is the taxes, and minimum wage never seems to catch up to the cost of living, no matter what you say. And you feel it more so in a state like this, where everything costs. The cost of living is high. I mean, if you were down south where the cost of living is inexpensive, then maybe.
I like it that to me, we're centralized. We have New York an hour and a half away from us. You have Philadelphia. You have the shore. You have mountains near us. I just feel we're centralized. We used to live in Colorado and Texas when we first got married. I don't know. I like the ocean.
Same thing. I mean, there's more to New Jersey than there is not to like about New Jersey. There's more to like than not like.
I like that it's sort of you get a little bit of everything. You know, you can, and as much as it like, you can sort of go a short distance and experience something different. Like you can go somewhere and see like a farm. Right, you can go somewhere and see a very urban setting. You can go somewhere and see a beach, see a bay, see a lake, see a forest. Right, you get a little bit of everything that you can get to. It's very, not only are the people diverse, but I think more. What I appreciate more is that the environment is diverse.
And look, but New Jersey is very segregated as a state. It's very segregated. But I think the untold story is places like this where people get along very well. I mean, you know, we have so many people from Caribbean countries. We have so many people from Central America, South America, African countries. You know, all the blacks that their families came up from the South during the Great Migration. You know, all the Italians and Irish, and you know, who came before them. I think it's a great success story. Is it as integrated as I would like? No, not quite. No, definitely not. But I think the story is it works pretty darn good.
As somebody who lives in New Jersey, what's your favorite thing about living here?
Wow. Probably the fact that you have everything at your fingertips. Whether it's the diversity of people, the diversity of the foods. If you're in the mood for Turkish food, not just your standard hummus and baba ganoush and falafel, but something like so detailed to the point of being Turkish, it's easy to get to that and find that. We have the access to travel around the world. I just came from Brazil, and just getting to Brazil is a breeze from here. Getting to anywhere in the world is a breeze from here. Obviously, New York is right here. Just everything you could possibly want, you got. Unfortunately, it comes with a cost, but if you can figure out how to afford it, you got it.